Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to learn a new lesson that is called Lost Spring, right? So let us begin our new lesson that is Lost Spring. What is this lesson all about? Let me tell you. Dear students, this lesson is about the child labor, okay, and the grinding poverty and traditions that restrict these children to a life of exploitation is something what this story is all about. Lost spring. Let me explain you what does lost spring refers to here. Spring here has spring season has been compared to the childhood life phase of a human being. Okay, so children are compared to the spring season here and lost spring because these children have lost the spring phase of their life. They are not able to enjoy their childhood. That is why the name of the lesson is Lost Spring. Okay, stolen childhood, stories of stolen childhood. Why stolen? Because like the children are not allowed to have carefree uh, and joyful childhood like the other children because of grinding poverty and sort of traditions for which they are bound to a life of exploitation, right? So this is what is lost spring all about. Now, let me give you a brief introduction about the poet. Anis Jung was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Okay, so basically she was born in Rourkela, which is in Orissa, and then she spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad, and then received her higher education in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers, so she belongs to a family where she has a history of intellectual parents. Anis Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspaper in India and abroad and has authored several books. The following is an excerpt from her book titled Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. So the story that we are going to study today is an excerpt. Excerpt means it is taken from a big book written by the writer herself, okay, by her own book. From her own book, this story is an extract of, and the name of our own book is the same as the name of our lesson together is Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. So let's find out, dear students, what the story is all about. So okay, let's continue with our explanation, dear students, right? Okay. See, this story is divided into two parts. In the first part, this story is divided in two parts. In the first part, what happens, dear students? In the first part, we can see the writer's interaction with a boy from Bangladesh who is a migrant laborer, you can say, whose name is Sahib. So in the first part, the writer interacts with a boy from Bangladesh who is settled in the slum area of Delhi and whose name is Sahib. And in the second part, the writer interacts with another boy from Firozabad. His name is or whose name is Mukesh. So there are two characters in this story. One is Sahib and another is Mukesh. So let's and they are the representatives of the of all the slum children, okay, in the country. So if we know the story of Sahib, we can know the story of all the slum children. Similarly, if we know the story of Mukesh, we shall find out or he is the representative of all the slum children as well. Therefore, if you know the story of Mukesh as well, it is the story of many people in slum children, so slum area. So let's find out. Why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Like he's asking Sahib, that why do you do this? Right? He, writer is asking me, why do you do this rag picking work? Why do you collect the garbage? What is the benefit? What do you get out of this? So why do you do this? I asked Sahib, whom I encounter every morning, scrounging for gold. He was a gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. So Sahib is found to be encountering. Sahib is found to be Sahib has a duty of looking for the gold, right? Gold in the sense that gold is used as a metaphor here. Uh, Gold means anything that is useful for Sahib from the garbage, because he keeps on collecting the garbage. So whatever useful he gets from the garbage has been referred to as gold actually. So the writer here inquires Sahib the what he and what he finds or in the garbage, and like what does he do it for, right? Sahib left his home long ago, set amidst the green fields of Dhaka. His home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him that's why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Okay, so dear students, as you can see here, the reason is given why Sahib has left Dhaka, that is Bangladesh. Why? Because because there were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. Okay, because their homes were, their fields were swept away by the cyclones, and then his mom tells him that is why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. Looking for gold in the big city dear students, is a metaphor actually. Okay, looking for gold in the big city is a metaphor. Gold here is a metaphor for something which is useful, right? Then Sahib says, I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school. Then when the writer asks him, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Then he says, I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say, glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. The advice was very hollow because there is no school in the neighborhood. How can he go to school? That is why, even though he said, the writer suggested to Sahib, but then he repented his statement, saying, why did I say? It's a hollow advice because there is no school around. How can Sahib attend one? Next, there is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. Sahib replies that there is no school in my neighborhood, but whenever the authorities will build one school, I will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. And then writer asked him, if I start a school, will you come? Yes, he says, smiling broadly. Sahib said, yes, certainly, I shall come. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? A few days later, what happens, dear students? I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? Because child is a child, so he still recollects what the writer has promised. That is why he's asking, is your school ready? Then he's saying, it takes longer to build a school. It takes longer. So somehow the writer has to manage, otherwise the child will again ask. That is why the writer said, it takes longer to build a school. I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. This particular, the writer became embarrassed. Why the writer became embarrassed? The writer became embarrassed because he knew that it was a fake promise on his behalf. on his part. From his end, it was a fake promise. He was not going to build a school for the children. Therefore, it was a fake promise. Therefore, he is feeling embarrassed actually. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. That is very important line, dear students. Promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. Bleak means dark. Bleak means dark. A lot of political parties come before the election to get their votes. So basically, these poor migrant workers, the slum people, are the vote banks of the political parties. So before the election, they also promise so many things, but they never fulfill their promises. That is why the writer says, promises like mine abounding are plenty in every corner of his means Sahib's bleak world. Bleak world refers to the dark world where Sahib resides, because Sahib and his slum children and other slum children like Sahib has no hope for future. That is why Sahib's world is referred to here as bleak world. Okay, political parties before the election starts keep coming to their slum areas, keep making tall promises which they never fulfill. That is why the writer says that you know. Uh, Promises like mine, are plenty in every corner of this bleak world. Right? After months of knowing him, I ask him his name, and then he says Sahibi Alam. He says his name. What is the name? Sahibi Alam. Okay. Students, don't be late uh, in your appearance, because if you are late you will miss out. I shall start uh, the on the right time, or might be 5 minutes late, but within 5 minutes you must join, otherwise you'll be missing out very important classes. Okay, I mean a very important part, uh, because if you do not listen from the very beginning, you might miss out. Okay, there is a linkage. All right, so that is why please do come on time. Right. Okay. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name. Then Sahibi Alam. He says, "My name is Sahibi Alam." He announces he does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe, he would have a hard time believing it. Okay, his name is the meaning of his name is Lord of the universe. But see the name, the irony in his name. Okay, he is a poor fellow. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. And the writer says that over the months, I have come to know each one of them. Right? So, what does Sahib do? What do other boys of his locality do? They roam around the street with he roams around with his friends, army of barefoot boys. Barefoot means they don't wear chappals. Okay, um, without slippers they keep moving every place. Okay, over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I asked one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. So, what is the reason as to why the children walk barefoot in this in slums? So, the reason is not lack of money, but because of the tradition to stay barefoot. Okay, so that is the reason why these slum children mostly stay barefoot without wearing chappals. Okay, I wonder, I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. So the writer is surprised. by the statement of a boy. Like he thinks that um, the writer thinks that might be this is an excuse just to cover up the perpetual state of poverty that they are undergoing. So he's wondering, he's not sure, but he's wondering if this is an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. Now, dear students, now let's move on to the next phase of this story. Next phase of this story. Okay. Uh, Okay. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. Right? So there is a story. Uh, I remember a story a man from Udupi told him. As a young boy, he would go, that man, okay, as a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. Means that no one stays there. It's very lonely now. In that backyard where lived the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others like the rag pickers in my neighborhood remained shoeless. Okay, so here he has told us a story that a man from Udupi once told him. So it's grinding poverty. The story is all about grinding poverty. They had to pray for getting shoes. The priest's son had to pray for getting the shoes. So, but in that area, of course, the boys wear shoes. But the area where the writer is settled, where no boys wear shoes, okay, they remain shoeless, right? So my account and acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri, a place in the periphery of Delhi. Okay, so he his acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers brought him to Simapuri, okay, where he met Sahib, a place in the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Okay, even though it is on the periphery of, sorry, periphery of Delhi, but it is miles away from Delhi. Okay. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahib's family is among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters' lists and enable them to buy a grain. Food is more important for survival than an identity. See, for the rag pickers in Simapur, uh, uh, for rag pickers in Simapuri, food is more important for survival than an identity. They don't need any identity; they need only food. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. So here, one family, say group of women in tattered saris. Okay, so the group of women are the migrants from Bangladesh. So who say that at the end of the day, if we can feed our families and go to bed without any hunger, then we shall prefer to live here in this place in the fields, sorry, here in Simapuri, then the fields in Bangladesh where we had to do a lot of work and there is no food now. So we would stay back to Simapuri if we can feed our families and we can go to bed without hunger. We shall prefer to stay back here than our fields in Bangladesh, than our homes in Bangladesh, right? Now you see, who said this? A group of women in tattered saris. Tattered means torn saris. When I asked them why they left that beautiful land of green fields and rivers, wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. This is important, dear students. Whenever these migrant workers they find food, they pitch their tent. They don't have any permanent homes. Okay, uh, they are having no permanent homes, and wherever they can manage to get food, they pitch their tents there. Children grew up in them, becoming partners in survival, and children also got adjusted to their parents and they become partners in survival. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. And when it comes to survival in Simapuri, it means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. Garbage to the people of Simapuri is gold. It is their daily bread. Why garbage is compared to gold? Because it is their daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. For a child, it is even more. Sometimes in garbage, they get very useful stuff. Okay, sometimes they get coins also. Therefore, garbage to them, scrounging for garbage, looking for something gold or important in the garbage is something what they look forward to. Why? Because they sometimes end up finding something, sometimes very useful stuff, sometimes coins as well. Therefore, they scrounge for gold from the garbage, and it's something that they do not miss out, right? Next, you see, I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Sahib says, his eyes lighting up. Sahib informs the writer that sometimes he gets a 10 rupee note also from the garbage. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it's a means of survival, right? So they, children and the adults, they see the garbage, they see garbage from different points of view, dear students. Okay, different points of view. For the parents, it's a means of survival, but for children, it's a kind of a wonder. Okay, they enjoy picking up some coins, some money. Sometimes it's a kind of a more of an enjoyment for them than matter of survival. But for the elders, picking up something useful from garbage is something which is a means of survival for them, right? One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. So one winter morning, what happened? Here, the writer could see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. So Sahib was watching two young men playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. And then Sahib says, I often get inside when there is no one around. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. So the gatekeeper is kind enough to let me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing a tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Sahib also somehow managed to get a donation, gift of a second-hand tennis shoes. Someone gave them to me, he says in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. That does not bother Sahib because he requires a shoe, doesn't matter if there is a hole in it or not. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. That is absolutely correct. For Sahib, it's a dream come true because all throughout he was walking barefoot. But the game he's watching so intently is out of his reach. But tennis is something, lawn tennis is something which cannot play. That is out of his reach, right? This morning, Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. Whenever the writer asks him, do you enjoy the job that you are doing in a tea stall? The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry. So the writer says that the steel canister is a burden for him. Okay, steel canister from where he serves the tea to the visitors, to the customers, is something which is a burden for him than the plastic bag, because in carrying the plastic bag for getting garbage, he is all free, he has his own freedom to work. But when it comes to steel canister, he has to be under somebody, under some authority. Therefore his freedom of movement, freedom of doing work is restricted. That is why the steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry, okay, so lightly over his shoulders. The bag was his. The bag was his. The plastic bag was his, but the steel canister is not his. It is the it belongs to his shop owner. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master. Sahib is no longer his own master. Why? Because he works at a nearby tea stall at a salary of 800 rupees per month, including all his meals. But even after that, he is not free. He is not free. Therefore, the writer says that the steel canister that it carries to serve tea to his customer seems to be heavier to him than the plastic bag that he carries over his shoulder to collect something useful from the garbage, right? Because the plastic bag is something which is his own. Okay, he can work at his own pace, whereas the steel canister that he carries in his hand is not his own. It belongs to the owner of his tea stall. Okay, so Sahib does not seem to be very much happy at working to the tea stall, at working to tea st- at working in tea stall, right? So, dear students, this is where the story of Sahib comes to an end, and next we shall start the story of Mukesh, right? Another boy like Sahib, but a bit different from Sahib. But he too is from uh, almost the same financial status, or same economic status, right? So, dear students, okay. So, Prakhar, here you are. You mark your attendance here in this form, and attendance will be open till 10:20. Okay, till 10:20. So uh, now that I finished my part today, so you go to the attendance, you fill up the attendance form, select your names, submit the forms, and register your attendance for the day. Okay, so all of you please register your attendance for the day and come back to me so that I can wind up my lesson here. Okay, today I have finished the first part of the story. Second part, I shall be winding up the whole story in the next class. Okay, so dear students, open the Google Forms and then mark your attendance. Come back to Google YouTube, and then let me know whether you have marked it or you faced any problem. Okay, so I'm waiting for your return. Okay, very good, Mansi, Vinit, thank you so much. uh, Thank you. All of you, please select your name, submit a Google form, your attendance will be automatically generated. Okay, thank you. Arya, thank you so much. Saiba, Vinit, then Ashutosh, Gauri, Suhani, Mayur, Prakhar, Tanvi, Alma. Okay, thank you so much, all of you. But it seems that there are very few students today. Sadvika, Arya Singh, I think very few of you are there today. Okay, you please be present because it's difficult for me. Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you, Vishu. Okay, it's difficult for me to repeat what I teach, time and again, and there is a pleasure in attending live class. Okay, you can see the recorded later on, but you will not find so much of interest because sometimes I interact with you in the live class. So live class has its own charm. You can ask me directly any question if you have any query. So Prakhar, Arya Singh, Nidhi, Arya Divedi, do you have any question? Tanvi, do you have Mayur? Do you have any question till what I have taught you today? If not, then I shall wind up for the day. Okay, thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Shanti. Okay, so let me wind up for the day. Tomorrow we shall wind up the lesson. The second part is left out. We shall come to know about the story of Mukesh. Okay, another boy like Sahib, but different than Sahib. Okay, so we shall come to know about Mukesh tomorrow, and thus wind up the lesson. Bye bye. Take care and have a great day.